Dubbed as the most powerful storm to make landfall in history, Typhoon Yolanda pounded the island of Leyte and other parts of Visayas with winds near 315 kilometers per hour and a tremendous storm surge.
People just are desperate to get out. There is really, in the direction all behind me, Jake, there is really nothing. I mean, the houses are gone, the shacks are gone.
It left thousands of people dead, injured, homeless, and in dire need for food. Today, after a year, the scars remain, and the survivors are still struggling to recover. Many countries came together and provided rescue and relief efforts, doctors, temporary classrooms, and homes. The FAITH, or the Foreign Aid Transparency Hub, reported a whopping 73 billion pesos in total foreign aid. Late last year, President Aquino appointed former Senator Panfilo Lacson as Presidential Assistant for Rehabilitation and Recovery, tasked to unify all rebuilding efforts. And just last week, Aquino also signed the 170.9 billion peso master plan for post-Yolanda rehabilitation. But some believe that the government has fallen short in their efforts in building back better.
Marami hindi pa nakaka-recover. Marami pa rin ang kulang, hindi natutustusan ng gobyerno.
Saan naman yung tulong na galing sa gobyerno? Yun ang hinihingi namin, cash assistance, para naman kami makapagpatayo ng sarili naming mga negosyo.
Nakukuha po namin sa gobyerno yung bigas lang po. Yun lang po ang natanggap namin na tulong.
Inin mga relief goods, pinapalitan yung pagdating sa Tacloban, pinapalitan yung mga imported na bigas, imported na mga sardinas, inialagay dito sa amin in Ipina.
Welcome to Opposing Views, a hard, straightforward discussion of today's most pressing issues. Given the extent of damage in Central Visayas, the end of its road to recovery seems far from sight. At least for now, when more than 100,000 households remain in makeshift shelters and evacuation centers, and there's no final death toll yet, and the government is suffering criticisms on how it's handling the recovery efforts. So our debate question for tonight, are the government's efforts enough 1 year after Super Typhoon Yolanda? Good evening, I'm Nepomuceno, and this is Opposing Views. Joining us tonight in our discussion is DSWD Assistant Secretary Camilo Goodmalin. ASEC Milo,
yes.
Good evening.
Good
Thank
evening.
you for joining us tonight. ASEC, your thoughts. So what's your evaluation? Has the government done its part for the past year? You think if you were going to grade it, you give it a passing mark?
Well, there are three phases in the disaster management. One is relief, second is early recovery, and then the third, rehabilitations. If we measure our accomplishments of responding to the disaster victims as regards to relief and early recovery, I think the government have done enough.
All right. Thank you very much, ASEC Milo. And on the opposing side is Gabriela Party List Representative, Congresswoman Luz Viminda Ilagan. Ma'am Luz, good evening and welcome again to Opposing Views.
Good evening.
Yes, ma'am, your position in this, do you agree with ASEC Milo that the government has done enough 1 year or during this past year, now that we're commemorating the anniversary of Typhoon Yolanda?
Well, definitely the government has done not enough. It has failed dismally when it comes to providing relief, rehabilitation, and rebuilding. Up to now, we see people saying that they have not received any relief at all. We still have people in shanties or in tents, and the rehabilitation plan was signed only in October 30. That is a mere 7 days before the 1 year anniversary. So what are we talking about? True, there has been relief, there has been rehab, there has been some plan. But then, if the plan alone took 1 year, what do we expect when it comes to implementation?
All right, thank you very much, Congresswoman Luz. And now let's go to the heart of the discussion. And I'll start this question with ASEC Milo. No? You think the national government has been effective in taking full control of the rebuilding process? As mentioned by Congresswoman Luz, there are a lot of people, and we saw it in the interview, there's still a lot of people who are disenchanted, and a lot of people that didn't get supposed aid the government was supposed to provide over the past year.
Well, there are about 1.4 million families that were affected by Yolanda. And out of 1.4, there were about 900,000 that were displaced within this Yolanda corridor. And on the part of government, as regards to relief, only for government, we provided more than 7 million food packs in these areas.
In the early days, 7 million food packs? Or in the past year? Are you talking about the past year?
For November, right after Yolanda, until March of 2014, we provided food packs of about 6 kilos rice. And then after that, because of logistical concerns, we increased the package to 25 kilos. And we ended up September of 2000.
So the 7 million is from November of last year up to September.
That's right.
That 7 million packs.
And this is over and above what has been provided for by the humanitarian agencies, the UN World Food Program, other international NGOs, the Red Cross societies, including our CSR in the countries, are also providing relief goods to the different victims of Yolanda.
Would you say, though, that the government was aptly prepared for this? I know that and I give that. I do recognize, I think a lot of people recognize that it was the strongest typhoon ever hit, that ever hit the country, and that has ever hit landfall, as a matter of fact. But do you think the government was prepared enough? As I said, there's still some people who are hungry, who claim that they have only received rice. That's all they've received so far.
Well, we did what we can humanly do, preparing for the arrival of Yolanda. But the Yolanda is overstretching the systems of our preparations. And in fact, a lot of our prepositioned goods were even washed out, both in the areas of Eastern Visayas and even in Central Visayas.
So what you're saying is, under the circumstances, it being the strongest typhoon, the government did whatever it could do.
That's
you
right.
maximized the resources.
That's right. We positioned more than 1,000 people to respond for Eastern Visayas. Right. But when we went there a day after, we cannot find any people to help us because all of these responders became victims of Yolanda.
Ma'am Luz, I think we recognize that fact, that this typhoon was ibang klaseng magnitude to. I mean, it's really beyond everyone's. No one wants this. By the way, we want to emphasize that no one certainly wish this on anyone. You won't wish this with your greatest enemy, your greatest enemy. But you think that the government, given the circumstances, could have still maximized the resources that they had?
Oh, yes, definitely. So much was given, not only from Congress, not only from the funds allocated to the DSWD, not only from foreign donors, but how come, even after several months, people were still lining up for food? And they were complaining that the rice they got, bulok, mabaho. And we read in the news that in one town, ang daming bigas na nilibing pa nga kasi nabulok, pagkain nabulok. So if the distribution had been done efficiently and immediately, people would not complain. We understand it was a very huge disaster of such great magnitude, it took us by surprise. But then, the surprise should have been for only a month, 2 months. After that, recovery should have been much quicker. Why? We poured so much funds. We poured so much assistance. Why was it not utilized? Let me read. As of June 2014, from the COA, only 77.45% utilization rate, and then only 1.64% of the augmented quick response fund was utilized, and total utilization was only 39.54%. So we still have a balance of 801,063,000.
Yeah.
So why was it not used? True, it was difficult to implement the program, but then with the funds available
The funds were there.
and with the assistance pouring in from outside, then we could have done more.
Asik Milo, I think that's what a lot of people are questioning. The COA report, there were a lot of funds that are still untapped up to this point. Why is that? I guess a lot of people are scratching their heads. How can that be possible? Is it just bureaucratic processes that's delaying all of this?
Well, this is a whole of government approach, and there are different agencies of government that are assigned to response. And DSWD is assigned to provide food, and non-food items for our disaster victims. And as far as our agency is concerned, we're able to deliver, the requirement.
So you're speaking on behalf of DSWD.
That's right. That's right. But of course, there are also who received this fund that was allocated by Congress, supplementary fund, that was also distributed to the different agencies.
So you're saying that the underutility, Ma'am, were you saying what the figures you were quoting earlier, were these funds allocated to the DSWD or to the entire government?
And this is DSWD, COA report. So the total utilization is much less. It's less than 0.5%. So where did it go? And how was it managed? No? And so we cannot avoid having all these questions, the suspicion that why was the fund, and I may cite COA report, as of December 31, 2013, the DSWD has the unutilized funds of 782,012,000 still deposited in DSWD accounts.
Right.
So why were they not used?
All right. On that point, Ma'am Luz, we need to take a short break, and we'll get back to that. We'll get the answer of Asik Milo. Meanwhile, we invite you to weigh in via Facebook at facebook.com/opposingviewsonline TV, or tweet your thoughts at opposing_views. Use the hashtag #OVYolanda. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views. I'm Nepomuceno. We have with us Asek Camilo Gudmalin and Representative Luz Viminda Ilagan. And the great question for tonight is, are the government's efforts enough 1 year after Super Typhoon Yolanda? Right before the break, Ma'am Luz made a point that there were donations given, and there were like 740 million pesos donated, and I think only 1% of that was used, according to a COA report. But that report, as you mentioned in the break, was December 3rd.
That's right.
December
30 of 2013.
Can you clarify what happened to those donations, and why did it take so long for the government, Asik Milo, to release those donations? Because a lot of people are scratching their heads and scratching their bellies, no? But ang tagal.
Well, for record purposes, DSWD received a total of 1.06 billion pesos, equivalent in pesos, donations intended for the Yolanda victims. And we started receiving that in the late of November, and then continuing until 2014. We were not able to immediately utilize the donations because we still have to validate from the donors as to what is the intended purpose of the donations, whether they wanted it to be used for relief goods, they wanted it to be used for early recovery, or they wanted it to be used for shelter. So
you had to validate the purpose of each donation.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
And,
what did you use first in the meantime? What did you use first for the relief efforts?
well, Congress immediately passed a supplementary budget.
Okay, so did you use that first?
We used that
to address
first.
the, All right. Okay. Now let's shift gears ng konti na. Ma'am Luz, do you think we should give money directly to the typhoon victims, whether it's government or it's donation? Do you think that that's the best way to help them?
Oh yes, especially during the early time, no, the early months. People needed money to recover. They needed money to buy food. The others could not receive relief goods, so they expected some amount so that they can use it, not only for food, but to start repairing their houses. And then, all they wanted was 30,000 per family. That was their computation. That's even a very small amount up to now. They're saying they have not received that amount. Why cannot we give directly if it's necessary? So there's relief, there's cash for work. Now, let me have the cash for building livelihood assets. Government reports that 215,471 received this short-term support, cash. So if that is the number that received this support, 780,000 families did not receive support.
Because
now,
there are more than a million
because
families, right? A million families
the
were affected.
money was not given at once. You know, you have to get the money at once. You have to get support at once. Now, let me cite the example of Panay, because it's not only Leyte that was hit. We forget there's Bohol, there's Panay, there's Samar, and other parts of Eastern Visayas. What did the Panay people do in Estancia? Because they could not wait for government anymore. It was very slow. They started building their own homes. They borrowed money. And then, because they already had their shanties, their homes, from borrowed money, they were disqualified from assistance. But they still needed assistance because that money they used was borrowed. And during this disaster, some people take advantage. Yung paghihiram ng pera, hindi na 5.6, naging 5.7, naging 5.8. Kaya dapat talaga, merong cash na ibigay, immediate yun, meron ding relief, meron ding iba pang suporta na kailangan ng mga tao. And government should be creative also, should not be tied to bureaucratic procedures because these are abnormal times.
Do you think, Asek Milo, that we were tied down too much, given the abnormality of the circumstances? Do you think the government should have at least tried to kind of relax those rules? And people were dying and people were barely surviving, and they were still exposed to the elements. It was still raining after Yolanda. There were still a couple of storms that came. Don't you think that we could have relaxed that, or your hands are really tied down? Wala kayong magagawa?
No, we precisely did what Congressman Luz was stating, of really providing money.
You did.
Aside from the food.
Did you just give it to 215,000 families, as mentioned by
Luz,
or is it more than that?
Ma'am Luz only mentioned the cash for building livelihood assets.
Yes.
But we have also cash for work.
Okay.
We have more than 90,000 individuals that were beneficiaries of cash for work.
How much is that? How much per family?
We spent about 131 million pesos for this cash for work program. And then we have the DOLE, Emergency Employment Program, about 55,000 families, 227 million pesos. And then the cash for building livelihood assets, we have 543 million, almost about 1 billion pesos. This is direct cash.
Direct cash.
Transfer to the disaster.
Where were they
victims.
getting it? Where the victims? Where were they getting it from? Did they go to the government offices, the SWD's office?
We organized together with the local governments.
Okay, you work. That's my next question, actually.
Yeah, we work.
Did you work with the concerned LGUs?
Yeah, that's right. Because we organized this municipality by municipality.
Okay.
And we asked our partner Municipal Social Welfare and Development Office to find from among the victims as to who would want to participate in the cash for work.
Did you prioritize, let's say, people talagang who are in talagang dire straits, were really talagang the worst off, or did you, in other words, did you have to evaluate, this person still has a house already, so less priority siya, let's go first to the people who don't have food or who don't have any shelter, or did you have to do that, or basically anyone who approached your office or the LGU got the help?
Well, number one, because this is cash for work, we are looking for people who are fit to do the work, including this cash for building livelihood assets. We also consider the physical fitness of these people to participate into the program. aside from these projects that were implemented, we have also our existing conditional cash transfer. And of these 900,000 families, 491 of that are members of Pantawid Pamilya.
CCT.
During disaster, part of our policy is to waive these conditionalities, meaning that we can pay them even without us
the conditions.
finding out whether they are complying with the conditionalities or not. So these are additional cash that we provided to
Is it safe to say that you mentioned earlier 1.4 million families were affected, right? By this? Is it safe to say you were able to touch all those 1.4 million families in some way, or at least provided them the opportunity to be helped? And then I'll go back to Congressman Luz.
Yeah, the combined efforts, not only of the national, but also of the local government, plus the humanitarian agencies that are
Do you agree, ma'am,
helping
that all the 1.4 million families that were affected had, let's say some of them were not able to benefit, but would you say that all 1.4 million families had at least the opportunity to approach government, LGU, or national government, or the DSWD?
Based on our reports, many were not able to avail of this assistance. And then it was mentioned that the LGUs were the partners, they were selected. That's the key word, selected. Because not all LGUs became the identified recipients. We have to be frank. Even the relief and the rehab were politicized. There were many LGUs that were not considered, quote unquote, allies of government, who were critical of government, that were not recipients of this aid. And we have reports from people on the ground that when they were identified as members of certain organizations that were not friendly to administration, they were disqualified from the assistance. And so, these are not stories made up by people from the national government or the national level.
These were not imagined.
These, not imagined. These are reports coming from the ground. Panay, for example, already has a comprehensive assessment of what happened to them. And this is one of those heartbreaking news that there was selection of those who would receive the aid, the assistance, and even later, you saw the mayor of Tacloban who had to say that he unfortunately had a different family name and therefore he would not be among those who would be the recipient of immediate assistance. What is important? No? We have to accept the SWD did its part, relief, rehab, recovery, but was it immediate? Was it done in a very efficient manner? And was it inclusive? Because if it was selective, then certainly we have problems. Why would people have to organize a people's surge? Why will they have to go all the way to Manila to speak on behalf of others who could not travel and say, we have not received the cash that you promised? I was with them in July. October, still no cash. And now, people are still living in shanties, and policies of government such as you cannot go back to where the disaster happened, no dwell, no build zones. These are fisher folks. Where will they go? The mountains?
All right.
And so these are questions that have to be asked.
All right, and I'll ask Asek Milo's comments on your points, Congressman Luz, but in the meantime, we'll need to take a short break. More issues about Typhoon Yolanda, the Typhoon Yolanda anniversary when we return. You're watching Opposing Views.
Marami pa rin yung mga binabalitang wala naman nagbago halos. Tapos dun sa donations na natanggap ng Pilipinas, parang questionable pa rin kung saan napunta.
Kung magkakaroon nga siya ng bahay pero wala siyang pagkakakitaan, babalik at babalik sila sa lugar na hindi naman sila dapat nandun.
Para sa akin po, opo, kasi natutulungan po nila yung mga taong nasalanta para bumangon ulit, para magkaroon po ulit ng pag-asa.
Hindi pa okay ang ano nila doon, mga kalagayan nila, di ba? Mga walang bahay, puro tent lang, di ba? Paano yan pag bumagyo ulit? Yeah, kawawa na naman sila doon.
Okay naman siya kasi lahat ng sa amin na salanta inatulungan naman niya. Yung mga binibigay niyang mga benefice para sa mahihirap, nagawa naman ng mga doon, gobyerno.
Welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views. I'm Nepomuceno. Still with us is DSWD ASEC Camilo Goodmalin and, of course, Gabriela Party List Representative Luz Biminda Ilagan. Our question, are the government's efforts enough 1 year after Super Typhoon Yolanda? Right before the break, Ma'am Luz was making a point, no, na parang it's become a selective type of, I guess, servicing on the part of the government, no, in providing relief and rehabilitation. Specifically, she mentioned that there seems to be some politics involved. Those LGUs that were benefiting from the government's assistance in rehabilitation seem to be those that were allied to the president. Would you agree with that, ASEC Milo, with that assessment?
No, I will talk by my own experience.
Okay.
I was one of the first responders that arrived in Tacloban, a day after Yolanda. And and since Tacloban was one of the hardest hit areas, and a lot of displaced people, we concentrated our relief operations in Yolanda. Of course, other DSWD personnel went to Cebu, you went to Panay to also do the relief distributions. During the meetings we had with NRMC, that is there also in Tacloban, is to concentrate first in Tacloban and then expand our distributions to the different municipalities of Leyte, and then we open up new distribution hub even in Giwan.
Okay. So your orders were specifically Tacloban.
Tacloban, yeah, Tacloban. 138 barangays. Kailangan mabigyan namin yun ng relief goods. And of course, during the time, the first 5 days of relief operation was very hard. Mga kalsada, puno ng debris. No? Wala kang sasakyan na makuha. So, what we did is really to communicate to the different barangays, and then tell them that, and then we told them that we have food here in this warehouse, and then whatever means that they can get this food from the warehouse, they will just go there, and we will give it to them. So that was the first 4 days, and then after that we scaled up our operations, going into as far as Ormoc in Biliran, as far as Western and Eastern Samar. We did not select. You
didn't select. When you were going there, you weren't. Kaalyado ng presidente yan, or walang ganon.
There was an assessment team that was immediately sent, by the Armed Forces of the Philippines, determining as to who are the municipalities that were affected by Yolanda. And based on that report, we put that into our map and we said this is where the distribution.
So your priorities based on those. The level of the impacted cities and municipalities. Yun ang basehan nyo. Yung level of impact or the level of damage.
Yeah, that's right. Even those that were hard to reach, the islands. Okay. So upon the arrivals of the aircraft coming from the U.S., we prioritized the hard-to-reach areas in the delivery of our.
Now I'll go to the question of Ma'am Luz, and Ma'am Luz, I'll let you weigh in also. There is still quite a number. There are like 95,000 households that are still living in unsafe and inadequate makeshift shelters, and there are like 25,000 individuals who are still in transitional shelters. No, that's quite a number. No, there are 428 families that remain in tents, 1,044 in bunkhouses, and 371 in temporary shelters. How do you address that? These are hard numbers, and after a year we still have these numbers. What is your comment to that, ASEC Milo?
Well, at the beginning, these displaced people were provided with temporary shelters, and these are tents. No? And living inside the tents is very difficult. It's very hot.
Yes.
No? So we said that we might as well transfer them to a bunkhouse. No? But when people were transferred to the bunkhouse, they started also complaining because very crowded and so on and so forth. So we decided to build now a single detached transitional shelter. Transitional shelters. And we are transferring them into the transitional shelter. The reasons why they are put into that temporary shelters, because as Ma'am Luz have pointed out, that there are areas in this affected by Yolanda that are really hazardous. You know, they are in the coastal areas and so on and so forth. And during consultations with the local government is that they need now to redefine the land use of those that were affected, because Yolanda changed also the
shape and the landscape.
The landscape of those that were affected. And therefore, there are areas that are already very hazardous. If there will be another storm, the same people who are living there will be put in harm's way. So, so the part of the planning is to find safer areas where these people can be relocated.
Now, Ma'am Luz, you think that the government address the issue of relocation of affected families? Do you think it's aptly address this particular? Of course, relief is another thing. We've discussed that. But yung mga relocation, you think that the government's doing a fine job?
No, government has not been doing its job. For example, let me just talk about houses. In Tanawan and Tacloban, only 364 houses built. And then the people are still in bunk houses. Why still on a permanent or semi-permanent or temporary situation when it's almost a year? It has been a year already. What has been done? Now, slow rebuilding actually. And this data came from the Office of the Presidential Assistant for Rehab and Recovery, OPAR. Slow rebuilding. Out of 19,648 targeted classrooms, only 213 have been repaired. Out of 132 public markets that should have been repaired, only 27 have been repaired. Out of a target of 431 kilometers farm to market roads, only 64 kilometers repaired. And out of 34 bridges that needed repair, only 3 have been repaired. In a span of 1 year, what have we been doing?
Asik Milo, those are hard numbers. Do you have any comment on those numbers? It's hard to argue against numbers, no?
Well, I'm not sure as to what is what's the cut-off date of the report of Ma'am Luz. Because I have also a report coming from OPAR.
Okay, what's your what is your report based on OPAR?
Well, as regards to the road, no, this is also a report coming from DPWH.
Yeah.
So they said here that 51.82 kilometers of farm to market roads completed, and that there is 173 kilometers ongoing rehabilitations. So this is an ongoing. As far as roads.
But in terms of percentage, though, those are kilometer numbers. People don't have a real, I guess, appreciation of what does that exactly mean, of 53 kilometers.
But sir, 431 kilometers needed to be repaired, and you had only
53 kilometers. So is it safe to say that only 10%
my
of the
number
roads,
is even bigger.
Is it safe to say that only 10% of the roads have been addressed?
The target is 304 kilometers for farm to market roads.
So
51 of these were completed and 173 ongoing. So more than half of those that were targeted is already started and completed.
Completed. Okay.
That's right.
If you rate yourself, you think it's fair to say that you're doing the best that you can? I mean, under the circumstances, or you could have done better?
Well, I think we need to compare, no, because this Yolanda has no comparison as far as country's experience, Philippine experience is concerned. So there's no comparison as to how fast or how slow we are in doing the rehabilitations. But you can compare this in Aceh, which is also devastating the whole of
Indonesia. You mean,
in Indonesia during the tsunami. About 150,000 houses were destroyed in that tsunami. And it took them 6 years to be able to rebuild the 150,000.
Okay.
So in Yolanda...
That's one presidential term.
That's right.
I'm just saying. All right.
6 years. No, 6 years.
I wasn't implying anything.
So
I guess
for Yolanda, we have almost about 500,000 totally damaged houses. 500,000. So
that's four.
So if we expect this to happen in 1 year's time, so I think that is unrealistic expectations.
All right. Now, okay, and I'll ask this to both of you, Ma'am Luz, no, and Asik Milo. DSWD Secretary Soliman reported to the President in a recent cabinet meeting. She said that, and I quote, "Rehabilitation is far from perfect, but the Philippines has made significant strides compared to other countries who've suffered the same thing." No, I guess there's just one evacuation center in Tacloban City serving 48 families. Now, is this accurate, Ma'am Luz? What does your data tell you?
Well, I would not know about the data coming from the DSWD, no? Because data coming from that agency could be self-serving. Now, if you have one evacuation center serving 48 families, it doesn't mean that the others are already well off and that they're doing very well. We're just talking about an evacuation center that has been left there. But then, I keep on harping, let's not talk about only one province, which was really devastated. What about the others? They have been neglected. Bohol, Panay, Samar, of course, and then Tacloban, no? Leyte. But if the President cannot even have the time to visit Tacloban and goes only to an area because his ally is there, we have other questions to raise.
All right, that's another interesting point. But in the meantime, we need to take a short break. Don't go away. When we come back, the results of our online poll on the issue and the final words of our guests. Stay tuned. You're watching Opposing Views. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Opposing Views. I'm Rod Nepomuceno. Still with us is Asek Milo Gudmalin and Representative Luz Viminda Ilagan. And our question for tonight, are the government's efforts enough 1 year after Super Typhoon Yolanda? Now, Ma'am Luz made the point, Asek Milo, earlier, that the President seems to be favoring the areas that are I guess, allied to him. No? And in fact, the proof of that is that tomorrow or now, I think the President is there in that area, and he's not even passing by Tacloban. I know you're not the spokesperson for the President, and you probably can't answer this. But is there some kind of subliminal message there, or I mean, a lot of people are questioning that Tacloban is in a way ground zero of Typhoon Yolanda, and yet the President is not there. No? And of course, we know who the mayor of that area is. So.
Well, in fact, Ma'am Luz already stated that Tacloban is not the only area affected by Yolanda. You have Cebu, you have Panay. And
it seems that Tacloban was the center of the benefits
that's right.
being given by the donations and all that.
So I think they have distributed themselves. Secretary Soliman is now in Tacloban, and then other cabinet secretaries went also to other affected areas, just to assure the people that the national government is doing everything it can to be able to alleviate the conditions brought about by Yolanda. And one of the, I think the good news that they can present there is the approval of our Yolanda Rehabilitation Master Plan.
Which came a year after, no?
That's right, that's right.
I'm stating a point. No? Let's address that. Ma'am Luz said, Ma'am Luz did make a point that the budget for this whole thing was approved 7 days before the first anniversary. I don't know if that's good timing or bad timing. What do you think? Do you think that that's a little too late?
No, I think it's not the budget that was approved. It was the plan.
Oh, the plan. All right. For the rehabilitation. Okay.
The plan was took time because they really have to validate the data. You know, we conducted a barangay survey, house after house, determining as to who among of those families that have damaged houses and what are the extents of damage. This took time to validate this data. And we really have to work together with the local government units to be able for them also to make confirmations of the data that were assessed by the national government. So these things takes time. And one of the problems, and also this is what's encountered in Aceh, especially in rebuilding houses. is really when you are confronted with the situations that you have to relocate people because the areas where they were before residing may no longer be fit for habitation.
Okay.
So that will take time, looking for these relocation areas.
Now let's move forward. No? Obviously, it's been a year. All of us, I guess, one way or another, has tried to pitch in to help. The government, of course, has been there. But let's talk about timetables here. No? Regarding the, I guess, complete recovery and rehabilitation. And Ma'am Luz, let me ask this to you. Do you expect the recovery to be finished within the government's timetable? Do you believe that? Do you have faith in what the government's providing, or the timetable that they're setting for the complete rehabilitation of the areas affected?
Well, based on government's track record and based on experience on the ground, if it takes 1 year to plan, to draw a plan, even with a budget available, I wonder how long it's going to take to implement that plan. I agree, it takes time, but it should not be a long, long time because people are waiting. People are hungry, people want jobs, people want to move on, but they cannot. So if you're asking about timetable, certainly, based on the experience that we've had, based on the amount of time that had been provided to government, I don't think it can finish within this administration's timetable.
Asik Milo, do you agree with the assessment of Congresswoman Luz? Do you think that we can't finish the complete rehabilitation within the president's term, for example, the next, I guess, 2 years, a year and a half or so?
Well, I have to differ on the statement of Secretary Lacson when he said after the presentation approval of the projects that only about 80% can be completed by the end of 2016.
80%.
So 80%. That is his estimates. But even prior to the approval of this master rehab plan, the different agencies already started doing the rehabilitations. In the case of the SWD, we have provided emergency shelter assistance, to about together with the UN agencies, we have provided about 221,000 families with shelter assistance, equivalent to 637 million pesos. Aside from that, we also provided budget for core shelter for 4,983, amounting to 303 million pesos. So the donations which we received, about $1 billion, were spent on emergency shelter assistance and core shelter.
And has this been spent, or it's still being spent right as we speak?
We have already distributed, because this is cash, to families with damaged houses. For this 221,000, this has already been distributed, and you can see now in areas that doesn't need to be relocated. You can now see repairs going on in these areas.
All right, Ma'am Luz, in a nutshell, what do you think the government is doing wrong, and how do you think what can they do now to reverse the trend? I guess the perception that they're not doing enough. What do you think they can do at this stage, 1 year after?
Well, they have to work overtime. And I think the planned visit of the Pope will motivate them.
You think it's good timing?
It's a good thing the Pope is coming over. If he were not coming over, I suppose we would have further delay. I could say that we have the saying, to whom much has been given, much is also expected. Much has been given to the agencies in terms of mandates and resources. Much is expected of them, but where is this?
Right. Asek Milo, do you think at this stage the people will see some concrete steps being taken by the government that they can really feel it? No, I mean, because again, our very own Mr. Jing Magsaysay is there, no? And he's been asking a lot of people, and the sentiment is just the government is not present, or at least they don't feel it. Do you think that now that the plan has been approved, now that of course the budgets are being released, and now that you've been able to evaluate each donation, do you feel in your heart that the people will finally feel the benefits that they can get from this government, from this Yolanda disaster?
Well, there are also a lot of people who has been, we saw in the video people saying that they receive assistance from the government. Me, perhaps not everybody, but there are as we are saying here, that there are a lot, hundreds of thousands also receive assistance. But we will be able to fast track further the implementations as stated by Ma'am Luz, given now the resources that is being made available to the agencies. In the case of the SWD, we are allocated about 20 billion out of the 170 billion. So these are enormous resources that we can mobilize to fast track now the recovery and rehabilitations of the affected areas. Okay,
we've reached the tail end of the show. We just have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, Asek Milo, to give your final words to our televiewers and probably assure them of what the government is doing.
Well, on the part of the national government and Department of Social Welfare and Development, the resources has been made available with the approval of the Yolanda Rehabilitation Master Plan. And we are now mobilizing our workers in the field to identify what are the priorities so that we will be able to utilize the money that is being given to us. And hopefully we'll be serving a lot of people who has been waiting for these resources. And hopefully we will be able to bring back into normalcy the lives of these affected by Yolanda.
All right. Thank you very much, DSWD Assistant Secretary Milo Gunmila. And Ma'am Luz, Congresswoman Luz Ilagan, your final words, ma'am, to our viewers.
Well, we say to see is to believe. So much resources, so much assistance coming from local and national and international groups. We have to see the effects of the utilization of these funds. We have to see how our people are being assisted. We cannot wait for another year. 1 year has passed, and yet we still have people on the ground complaining that they are not able to move on. They have not even buried their dead. There are still ships on the shoreline which have not been removed. How many bodies do you think are still under those ships? So these are morbid realities that we want our people to escape from. As I have said earlier, so much has been given in terms of mandate, resources to our agencies. We expect also that they do their job quickly, efficiently, immediately for our people.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman Luz Yuminda Ilagan. And again, thank you to our guests, DSWD Assistant Secretary Camilo Goodmalin and Gabriela Party List Representative Congresswoman Luz Yuminda Ilagan. Now let's see the results of our online poll. We asked you, are the government's efforts enough 1 year after Super Typhoon Yolanda? Those who answered yes, they've been enough, 30%. Those who answered no, 70%. And that's our opposing views for tonight. Tune in again next week for another bold and engaging discussion on today's most relevant issues. I'm Nepomuceno. Good night. God bless. Happy weekend. Night. Are the government's efforts enough 1 year after Super Typhoon Yolanda? Good evening, I'm Nepomuceno, and this is Opposing Views. Joining us tonight in our discussion is DSWD Assistant Secretary Camilo Goodmalin. Asek Milo,
yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You for joining us tonight. Asek, your thoughts. So what's your evaluation? Has the government done its part for the past year? You think if you were going to grade it, you give it a passing mark?
Well, there are 3 phases in the disaster management. One is relief, second is early recovery, and then the third, rehabilitations. If we measure our accomplishments of responding to the disaster victims as regards to relief and early recovery, I think the government have done enough.
All right. Thank you very much, Asek Milo. And on the opposing side is Gabriela Party List Representative, Congresswoman Luz Viminda Ilagan. Ma'am Luz, good evening and welcome again to Opposing Views.
Good evening.
Yes, Ma'am, your position on this, do you agree with Asek Milo that the government has done enough 1 year or during this past year, now that we're commemorating the anniversary of Typhoon Yolanda?
Well, definitely the government has done not enough. It has failed dismally when it comes to providing relief, rehabilitation, and rebuilding. Up to now, we see people saying that they have not received any relief at all. We still have people in shanties or in tents, and the rehabilitation plan was signed only in October 30. That is a mere 7 days before the 1-year anniversary. So what are we talking about? True, there has been relief, there has been rehab, there has been some plan, but then if the plan alone took 1 year, what do we expect when it comes to implementation?
All right, thank you very much, Congresswoman Luz. And now let's go to the heart of the discussion. And I'll start this question with Asek Milo. No? You think the national government has been effective in taking full control of the rebuilding process? As mentioned by Congresswoman Luz, there are a lot of people, and we saw it in the interview, there's still a lot of people who are disenchanted, and a lot of people that didn't get supposed aid the government was supposed to provide over the past year.
Well, there are about 1.4 million families that were affected by Yolanda. And out of 1.4, there were about 900,000 that were displaced within this Yolanda corridor. And on the part of government, as regards to relief, only for government, we provided more than 7 million food packs in these areas.
Of course, in the early days, 7 million food packs, or in the past year? Are you talking about the past year?
For November, right after Yolanda, until March of 2014, we provided food packs of about 6 kilos rice, and then after that, because of logistical concerns, we increased the package to 25 kilos, and we ended up with September of 2000.
So the 7 million is from November of last year up to September.
That's right.
That 7 million packs.
And this is over and above what has been provided for by the humanitarian agencies, the UN World Food Program, other international NGOs, the Red Cross societies, including our CSR in the countries are also providing relief goods to the different victims of Yolanda.
Would you say, though, that the government was aptly prepared for this? I know that and I give that. I do recognize, I think a lot of people recognize that it was the strongest typhoon ever hit, that ever hit the country and that has ever hit landfall, as a matter of fact. But do you think the government was prepared enough? As I said, there's still some people who are hungry, who claim that they have only received rice. That's all they've received so far.
Well, we did what we can humanly do, preparing for the arrival of Yolanda. But the Yolanda
Dubbed as the most powerful storm to make landfall in history, Typhoon Yolanda pounded the island of Leyte and other parts of Visayas with winds near 315 kilometers per hour and a tremendous storm surge.
People just are desperate to get out. There is really, in the direction all behind me, Jake, there is really nothing. I mean, the houses are gone, the shacks are gone.
It left thousands of people dead, injured, homeless, and in dire need for food. Today, after a year, the scars remain, and the survivors are still struggling to recover. Many countries came together and provided rescue and relief efforts, doctors, temporary classrooms, and homes. The FAITH, or the Foreign Aid Transparency Hub, reported a whopping 73 billion pesos in total foreign aid. Late last year, President Aquino appointed former Senator Panfilo Lacson as Presidential Assistant for Rehabilitation and Recovery, tasked to unify all rebuilding efforts. And just last week, Aquino also signed the 170.9 billion peso master plan for post-Yolanda rehabilitation. But some believe that the government has fallen short in their efforts in building back better.
Marami hindi pa nakaka-recover. Marami pa rin ang kulang, hindi natutustusan ng gobyerno.
Saan naman yung tulong na galing sa gobyerno? Yun ang hinihingi namin, cash assistance, para naman kami makapagpatayo ng sarili naming mga negosyo.
Nakukuha po namin sa gobyerno yung bigas lang po. Yun lang po ang natanggap namin na tulong.
Inin mga relief goods, pinapalitan yung pagdating sa Tacloban, pinapalitan yung mga imported na bigas, imported na mga sardinas, inialagay dito sa amin, inipin na.
Welcome to Opposing Views, a hard, straightforward discussion of today's most pressing issues. Given the extent of damage in Central Visayas, the end of its road to recovery seems far from sight. At least for now, when more than 100,000 households remain in makeshift shelters and evacuation centers, and there's no final death toll yet, and the government is suffering criticisms on how it's handling the recovery efforts. So our debate question for today